Hello everybody and welcome to this video of Dead by Daylight. Let's discuss the topic of the Trap Door Standoff. If you don't know what that is, let me explain. The trapdoor is available to survivors in a few different methods. Primarily, you access it by being the final survivor in the game. It will spawn when the amount of generators fixed are equal to the amount of living survivors plus 1. Once you are the final survivor, the trapdoor then opens and you can use it to escape. So the standoff begins when both survivor and killer are at the trapdoor while it's open. If the survivor chooses to jump in, they can be grabbed during the jump, leading to their death. Or if the killer chooses to strike the survivor, then the survivor is free to jump in while the killer is stuck in their successful attack animation. Even if the killer would put the survivor in a dying state on the ground, the survivor is still capable of jumping through the open trapdoor. This causes both survivor and killer to stand still looking at each other in a game of patience. This can lead to some very boring, drawn-out standoffs that waste time for both the killer and survivor, and in the end it's just up to one of them to give up, but we all know that pride can stand in the way. I bring this up due to the developers in the recent stream talking about this being on their list of things to fix. I've always had constructive criticism for Dead by Daylight, but have never wanted it to be heard as much as this one. I feel there is a larger issue than just the trapdoor that can help fix this issue and make the final portion of the game terrifying for the survivors. Typically, when the final generator is completed and doors are open, the killer is left to the survivor's mercy. Even if one survivor remains and gets the final generator, the killer has no chance on guarding the doors and the trapdoor unless they're very lucky and happen to come across a survivor before the survivor figures out which one they want to go to. This leaves the killer to be at the mercy of the survivors at this point in the game. Without certain perks or tools, the killer will have trouble being a threat to the survivors as they get to have their fun teasing the killer. They can choose to stand at the door, wait for the killer, play around a bit more, get some totems, find some left behind items. They may even choose to stay behind to try to be the last one to get the trapdoor. In the end, the killer is not much of a threat at this point, simply due to the exits being opened and easily accessible. The fix? Allow the killer to close open doors and trapdoors. By being able to close these doors, there are several factors that keep the killer terrifying to the survivors instead of a simple joke. When the doors close, any survivors on the other side would be forced to escape, leaving the remaining survivors having to reopen the doors. As far as the trapdoor goes, it should be capable of being reopened normally if closed by a killer. What this should do is eliminate a standoff that would occur and instead encourage the survivor to sneak around and find a different path instead of trying to stare the killer down. In more detail, closing the door should be similar to that of performing a damage generator action. When the action is completed, a regular door should shut, causing any survivor on the outside to immediately escape with no re-entry. Survivors would then have to, once again, open the door by normal means. The trapdoor would be the same, as the killer would have to knock the hatch closed while performing the action, which would then, in turn, require a brief period of time to be reopened and escape it. While closed, it should eliminate the sound the trapdoor emits as well. In terms of the standoff, it would be important that when the animation to closing the trapdoor begins, the survivor should not be able to jump through the hatch. Yet, if the survivor is near the trapdoor, this animation of the killer closing the hatch should force the killer to look down at the trapdoor to give the survivor a chance to run and hide. This should prevent a stale standoff and instead create a game of cat and mouse, as the killer may now hunt without escape being so easy. Probably one of my biggest complaints about Dead by Daylight is how funny it can get and silly when you can play with the killer at the end of the game. The killer is not a threat when doors are open. This also causes the killer to have to go and camp their final kill to secure it, because there is no need to let that kill go due to the doors being open and the escape being generally easy. However, being able to close doors will allow the killer to have more of an opportunity to hunt with a bit more incentive. Then they're gonna get off the hook, they're gonna run out the door. This is not to empower the killers any more than they already are, however, to assure survivors keep in mind that survival is not guaranteed until you survive. I have always believed that the immersion and horror experience of this game is what kept me coming back for more, and once I feel that the opponent is no longer a threat, I begin to lose my immersion. Once doors are open, that's when immersion is broken, as I have little need to leave as a survivor and I have little need to continue the hunt as a killer. The game is in the survivor's hands at this time, and I believe closing the doors will take it out of their hands and leave it up to the hunt to decide whether they survive. And what do you guys think? If you agree, please share this around. I'd love the developers to be able to hear my thoughts on this. Comment below of your thoughts or ideas, and if you like this video, feel free to check out previous discussion videos and join the conversation. And as always, good game.